you know, it happens. I admit it. I'm sorry. So anyway, yes, I was wrong. On one of the older videos that I published here, I was talking about the Sony A6400, the new Sony Alpha series camera, and I said that the screen dims when filming 4K, which is something that happens on the Sony A6300, A6500. The screen dims. It makes it unusable in some situations, in many situations. Not in every situation, but in some situations. So I thought the 6400 does the same. I don't know where I got that information, and I apologize for that. I need to correct that. It does not dim, and this makes a big difference. My previous comment, there's nothing to see, let's move on. Well, no, let's stop and let's take a look at the camera then, because it's got excellent autofocusing and it's got a screen that can flip back if you film yourself, and it's not gonna dim, which makes it usable in many situations, especially outdoors under the sun. But sometimes you wanted to have the full brightness control, you know, a visual control of what you were doing without going almost fully dark. What's missing still with this camera is the sensor stabilization, IBIS. Unfortunately, this is sad. You know, the price of the camera justifies, you know, it's a little bit lower than the 6500, but it's got a more sophisticated autofocus than the 6500, which makes me think that's too bad. You know, I have to choose. I'm sure they're going to come out with another one that will have all these features together, probably at an outrageous price, but especially considering the fact that I'm not completely satisfied with all the lens that Sony offers for the Alpha series. And I will come back and talk more about some of the lenses that I've tried and I'm using. And so at the moment, you got to choose between a camera with no stabilization. Of course, you can rely on lens stabilization, but not all Sony lenses have stabilization. For example, my 85mm 1.4, which is a beautiful lens, it doesn't have it doesn't have lens stabilization. So if the camera also doesn't have stabilization, then you know, depending on what you do, it's going to give you problems, even on a tripod, unless the tripod is incredibly sturdy. And you know, it's 85mm is relative. It's translates a bit differently on APS-C. Basically, it's quite, you know, it goes far. It's like a close-up lens. You know, any small movement is going to affect what you do, especially when filming. Less in photography, of course. It's a bad habit of Sony to ignore sensor stabilization. They do it a lot on many of their phones, unfortunately, which makes the video on their phones fine, especially the ZX1 and other phones that they have, because the electronic stabilization works well for video, but it makes the photography unusable in some cases. Anyway, back to the 6400, the Alpha camera. It still doesn't have headphone output. Yes, you can use an HDMI adapter, but it's micro HDMI. It's unreliable. It's something you cannot use that to monitor audio. So if you're going to work with that, you have to have external audio. You might not have to have external audio. You can get away with, you know, guessing it if you run your test before, but it's not my favorite way to work. And that is a problem that will probably stay, because I think Sony is crippling their 6000 series. You know, they're doing it on purpose. So in any case, this still remains a very interesting camera because their autofocus is fantastic. Maybe one of the best out there. Some people are going to come in and say, yeah, but Canon also has that because of the dual pixel, but Canon doesn't have 4K. Canon is lacking in video capacity. They are, you know, they're trying to cripple their cameras, hoping that you will buy some video cameras that most people are not going to buy anyway. And so that's out of the question. I think this puts Sony in direct competition with the Fujifilm cameras, which also have APS-C. The latest Fuji is the Fuji has better lens though. It has really good lens. So you're missing the stabilized sensor, but you have really good lens. Some of them with excellent stabilization. and Fuji is equipped to give you sound monitoring, microphone, and everything that you might need to do excellent video. Fuji is doing really well. What's missing with Fuji is the reliable autofocus that Sony has. They seem to be improving, but I really don't think they're there yet. But anyway, we'll see what happens. What comes out in the second half of 2019, and hopefully Fuji or Sony is going to come out with a camera that is going to be near perfect for filming and taking excellent photos, despite being APS-C size.